She offered him her body just to survive, but he protected her honor instead. Amina was a young woman living in a small, quiet village tucked away between dusty roads and golden fields. Her life had always been simple, but simplicity did not mean ease. From a very young age, she understood the meaning of struggle and responsibility. Her father had been the only breadwinner of the family, working tirelessly as a laborer to provide food and clothes for his family. Her mother had passed away when Amina was just 10 years old, leaving a void that no one could fill. Her younger siblings, 2 boys and a little girl, relied entirely on Amina and her father. Every morning, Amina would wake before the sun rose, fetching water from a distant well and helping her father with whatever work was available. Despite her youth, she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years, always thinking about how to keep her siblings fed and her home warm. Life in the village was not easy, especially for a girl. Education for girls was seen as less important than helping with household chores, and Amina had learned to read and write only because her father insisted it was necessary. She loved learning, and books had always been her escape. They made her imagine worlds far away from the dusty streets and small, crowded houses. But those dreams felt fragile, like delicate petals that could be crushed by the weight of reality. Every day, she faced the harsh truth that dreams alone would not put food on the table or secure a future for her siblings. When Amina turned 17, her father became ill. What started as a simple fever soon turned into something serious, leaving him too weak to work. The burden on Amina grew heavier with each passing day. She tried to take on odd jobs in the village, helping farmers with their fields, running errands, carrying water. But the pay was meager, barely enough to buy rice or lentils. Nights were the hardest. After finishing her chores, she would sit by the small lantern in their modest home, thinking about how she could make life easier for her brothers and sister. She often stayed awake long after everyone else slept, pondering ways to earn money or find work outside the village. One afternoon, while Amina was helping a farmer harvest wheat, she noticed a man walking along the dusty road. He was dressed differently from the villagers, in neat clothes that suggested he came from a city far away. His name was Rehan, and he had come to the village for business. He was polite and kind, asking questions about the crops and complimenting Amina on her hard work. Most people in the village would have been suspicious of a stranger, but Amina saw something different in him. There was no rush in his words, no condescension in his tone, only genuine curiosity and respect. For the first time in many months, she felt a small spark of hope, a reminder that not everyone in the world was harsh or selfish. Over the next few days, Rehan returned to the village for his work, and Amina would sometimes see him in the fields. They began talking quietly during breaks, sharing stories of their lives. Amina spoke of her father, her siblings, and the struggles she faced daily. Rehan listened carefully, never judging her or offering empty advice. He asked questions with genuine interest, and Amina found herself opening up in ways she had not done with anyone else. It felt comforting to share her fears and worries with someone who seemed to understand the weight she carried. Despite her growing friendship with Rehan, life remained difficult. Her father's illness worsened, and the small savings they had were quickly disappearing. Amina would spend hours walking to nearby villages in search of work, often returning with nothing. Some days, she came home empty-handed and hungry, her stomach aching from hunger, but she refused to show despair in front of her siblings. She would smile, telling them that tomorrow would be better, even though she was not sure if it would be. Her determination to protect her family's dignity was stronger than her own exhaustion. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Amina sat outside their small home, mending torn clothes by the flickering light of a lantern. She thought about the life she wanted for her siblings, a life with opportunities, education, and freedom from hunger. Her heart ached, knowing that such dreams were far away and that every choice she made now could mean the difference between survival and despair. At that moment, Rehin approached quietly, carrying a small bundle of food. He handed it to her with a gentle smile, refusing to accept thanks. "Just something to help," he said softly. Amina felt a warmth she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the kindness and understanding he showed. She realized that even in her darkest moments, human goodness still existed. Yet, the village had its own rules and harsh realities. Opportunities for women like Amina were extremely limited. Many villagers expected her to marry early, but her mind was set on something else. She wanted to survive with honor, to provide for her siblings, and to preserve the dignity of her family. Every day, she balanced hope and desperation, knowing that one wrong step could bring shame or harm. And in this delicate balance, Rehin became more than just a visitor or a friend. He became a witness to her struggle, someone who saw her strength and understood her plight without judgment. Amina also noticed that her feelings toward Rehin were complicated. She admired him not for his wealth or appearance, but for his integrity, patience, and respect. In a world that often judged women harshly, Rehin treated her like an equal, listening to her fears, offering advice without commanding her actions. This quiet support meant more to her than any money or gift ever could. But she also knew that her circumstances were desperate, and her mind sometimes wandered to dark possibilities. What if she could not find a way to survive honorably? What choices would she be forced to make? As the weeks passed, Amina's situation grew more urgent. Her father's illness made work almost impossible, and the little money they had saved was gone. Her siblings depended on her entirely. She would sometimes sit in the fields after finishing her chores, watching the horizon, thinking about how she could escape this cycle of poverty. She knew that life could be cruel and unfair, especially for a young woman alone in the village. But even in the midst of fear and uncertainty, Amina clung to one truth. She would do whatever it took to protect her family's dignity, even if it meant making impossible choices. By the end of part 1, Amina's life was defined by struggle, responsibility, and quiet resilience. She had faced hardships that most adults would find overwhelming, yet she continued to rise each day, carrying the weight of her family on her shoulders. Rehin's presence offered her a glimpse of hope and human kindness, reminding her that even in the darkest moments, compassion and integrity could light the way. The stage was set for challenges yet to come, and Amina's courage and determination were about to be tested in ways she could never have imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the struggles Amina faced began to feel heavier than ever. Her father's illness was worsening, leaving him bedridden for long hours. Each morning, Amina would wake before dawn, prepare a small breakfast of what little rice and lentils they had, and tend to her father's needs. She washed him, helped him sit up, and tried to ease his pain as much as she could, all while ensuring her younger siblings were fed and ready for school. Her life had become a delicate balancing act, with no room for mistakes. Every decision carried weight, and every small error could make life harder for the family. Work outside the home was unpredictable and often insufficient. Some days she carried water for villagers, walking long distances under the scorching sun, her feet blistered and sore. Other days she helped with planting or harvesting crops, doing tasks meant for men twice her size. No matter how hard she worked, the earnings were meager, barely enough to buy a handful of vegetables or a small loaf of bread. Amina often returned home exhausted, her body aching, yet she would mask her pain behind a gentle smile whenever her siblings asked her if she was tired. She could not afford to show weakness. Her family depended on her strength. During this time, Rehin remained a steady presence in her life, though their interactions were always careful and respectful. He would visit the village for his business work and sometimes offer Amina advice on managing daily struggles. He never tried to control her or offer solutions that compromised her independence. Instead, he shared practical ideas, suggestions on ways she could earn a little extra, how to make her limited resources stretch further, and how to take care of her father without losing her own strength. Rehin's guidance, patience, and respect gave her hope in moments of despair. Yet, as days passed, Amina felt the pressure of her situation mounting. The village offered few opportunities for young women, especially those without family support or education beyond basic literacy. Amina often thought about finding work in the nearby town, where there were shops and small businesses that might pay her a little more. But she also knew that the journey would be long, and she would have to leave her siblings behind for hours at a time. She worried about their safety and well-being, but the urgent need for money left her with few options. One afternoon, a distant relative visiting the village introduced Amina to a man who promised to provide work for her. At first, it seemed like a glimmer of hope. He spoke in flattering tones, promising her money if she agreed to certain personal favors. Amina froze. She understood exactly what he meant. The words filled her with shame, fear, and disbelief. How could someone expect her to risk her honor just to survive? She wanted to scream, to reject him outright, but the image of her starving siblings and a sick father paralyzed her. She stood silently, torn between survival and dignity, the weight of her responsibilities pressing down harder than ever before. That evening, Amina confided in Rehin. She explained the encounter carefully, trying not to sound weak, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. Rehin listened without interruption, his expression calm but serious. He did not scold her or dismiss her fears. Instead, he asked questions gently, wanting to understand the situation fully. He helped her see that there might be other ways to earn money, ways that did not compromise her self-respect or safety. His presence was comforting. For the first time, Amina felt that she was not entirely alone, that someone genuinely cared about her well-being without any selfish motive. Despite Rehin's support, Amina could not ignore the danger she faced. The man was persistent, sending messages through relatives and neighbors, offering more money, and using subtle threats to pressure her. Each day, Amina felt cornered, as if the walls of the village were closing in around her. She began to feel hopeless at times, believing that she might have no choice but to give in to the man's demands. Nights were the hardest. She would sit in the quiet of her room, clutching her younger sister's hand, imagining the worst possible outcomes. Her heart raced, and tears would often fill her eyes, but she refused to cry openly in front of her siblings. Amina's thoughts turned dark as desperation crept into her mind. She asked herself questions she never thought she would ask. If survival means giving up my dignity, can I still call it life? How much is too much to sacrifice for my family? Is there a way to protect them without losing myself? These questions haunted her, but she also realized something important. She could not let fear dictate her actions entirely. She needed courage, careful thinking, and a plan. Rehin, noticing her increasing anxiety, decided to act in a way that balanced caution and protection. He accompanied her discreetly to speak with village elders, seeking advice and support to ensure she would not be forced into a dangerous situation. They discussed ways to approach the relative and the man without creating conflict or shame, and explored options for honest work in nearby towns and cities. Rehin's careful planning and practical advice gave Amina a sense of relief. She could see that she had allies and options, even if the path was still difficult. During these trying weeks, Amina also learned more about her own strength. She began taking small steps to secure her family's survival without compromising herself. She started making simple crafts, woven baskets and hand-stitched clothes, which she sold in the local market. She found a trustworthy farmer who paid her for extra labor in the fields. These efforts did not provide wealth, but they gave her hope and the knowledge that she could survive through her own skill and effort. Every coin she earned brought her a sense of pride and independence, and the small victories reminded her that there were ways to overcome hardship without surrendering her dignity. At the same time, Amina's relationship with Rehin grew deeper, but always rooted in respect. He never pressured her or tried to make her dependent on him. He admired her resilience, her determination, and her unwavering care for her family. And Amina began to trust him completely, knowing that he would protect her if danger arose, but never at the cost of her honor. This trust was rare, and it became a pillar of her courage. She realized that having someone who believed in her integrity was as valuable as any money or support. As the weeks continued, the man who had pressured Amina grew impatient. He sent word that he expected an answer, and the threats became more direct. Fear threatened to paralyze her again, but this time, Amina did not face it alone. Rehin stood by her side, offering guidance, strategy, and protection. Together, they worked on ways to confront the situation safely, ensuring that Amina's dignity remained intact while also protecting her family from harm. The stakes were higher than ever, but Amina felt ready. She had learned the power of patience, careful planning, and the value of allies who respected her as a person. By the end of this period, Amina had grown stronger in ways she never imagined. The desperation that once made her consider dangerous choices had shifted into careful determination. She knew that survival was not just about immediate money or shelter. It was about protecting herself and her family while maintaining honor and dignity. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely despite it. Rehin's steady presence had shown her that even in a world filled with hardship, respect, kindness, and integrity could prevail. The days that followed were the most difficult Amina had ever faced. The man who had offered her money in exchange for favors became bolder and more aggressive. Rumors spread through the village, whispered from one neighbor to another, and the pressure on Amina grew unbearable. Her nights were filled with restless worry. She feared for her safety, for the safety of her younger siblings, and for the honor of her family. Every step outside her small home felt like walking on a tightrope. One misstep could ruin everything she had worked so hard to protect. Amina tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, continuing with her daily chores and work. She woke before dawn, helped her father wash and eat, and prepared her siblings for school. She carried water from the distant well, worked in the fields, and made simple crafts to sell in the market. Each small victory, each coin earned honestly, felt like a shield against the storm that threatened her life. Yet the threat from the man persisted, growing more urgent with every passing day. He began sending intermediaries, people from the village, to pressure her into agreeing to his demands. His words were veiled threats, but Amina knew exactly what they meant. Fear gnawed at her, and for the first time, she truly understood the weight of desperation. The thought of giving in even for a moment terrified her, but she also knew that her family depended on her survival. Hunger, illness, and poverty were real enemies, and she had faced them all her life. But this threat was different. It was personal. It attacked her dignity and integrity directly. She felt trapped, as if the walls of her home were closing in, leaving no escape. It was during this dark time that Rehin's role became even more critical. He remained a calm, steady presence in Amina's life, offering practical advice and emotional support. He told her, "You are not alone in this. We will find a way that keeps you safe and protects your honor." His words were simple, yet they carried immense weight. Amina realized that having someone to rely on, someone who truly understood her struggle, gave her courage she had never known before. One afternoon, Rehin arrived at the village unexpectedly. He had taken the time to speak with local authorities and respected elders to ensure Amina's safety. He explained to her that confronting the man directly could be dangerous, but with a careful plan, it was possible to protect her and her family without compromise. Together, they mapped out a strategy, identifying trustworthy villagers who could act as witnesses and allies. Amina felt a sense of relief she had not felt in weeks. She knew she would face danger, but she would not face it alone. The turning point came when the man sent one of his intermediaries directly to Amina's home. The messenger demanded an answer, using threatening language and insinuations. Amina's heart pounded. She looked at her younger siblings playing quietly in the corner, oblivious to the danger. Fear clutched at her chest, but she remembered Rehin's words. She stood tall, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. She refused the man's demands, asserting her right to live and protect her family with dignity. The messenger left, angered, but Amina knew this was only the beginning. Rehin acted decisively. He approached the man directly, speaking calmly but firmly. He explained that any further threats would not be tolerated, and that Amina's life and honor were not for sale. He offered practical solutions for the man to make amends or find other opportunities without harming Amina. Rehin's approach was bold yet respectful, and it sent a clear message. Amina would not be intimidated or forced into submission. The man, surprised by Rehin's courage and determination, retreated for the time being. During these tense days, Amina discovered a strength within herself that she had never recognized before. She realized that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She learned that protection and support could come in many forms, and that having allies who respected her dignity was more powerful than any money or material help. Each day she faced the threat, she grew more resilient. Her determination to protect her family and herself became unshakable. Amina also noticed the importance of community during this time. Some villagers who had initially been passive observers began to offer quiet support. They helped her carry water, watched over her siblings, and provided small amounts of honest work. These acts of kindness reminded her that even in a world filled with hardship and danger, there were still people willing to stand up for what was right. The support of the community, combined with Rehin's guidance, created a network of protection that strengthened her resolve. Despite the danger, life had to continue. Amina still woke each morning to care for her father, prepare meals, and tend to her siblings. She continued selling crafts in the market, working in the fields, and seeking honest opportunities. Each day was a careful balance between survival and vigilance. She learned to read subtle cues, to recognize threats before they escalated, and to act quickly when necessary. Her mind became sharper, her instincts keener, and her spirit stronger. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Amina sat outside her home, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, and the village was calm for a brief moment. She thought about how fear had once dominated her life, and how she had almost considered compromising her dignity to survive. But she also thought about Rehin, his unwavering support, and the community members who had stood by her. She realized that honor, courage, and resilience were far more valuable than any immediate relief that might have come from surrendering to fear. The situation reached a critical point when the man attempted to send another intermediary, more aggressive than the last. Amina's family was anxious, and the tension in the village grew palpable. But this time, Amina was ready. With Rehin's guidance, she calmly addressed the situation. She confronted the intermediary with confidence, asserting her boundaries clearly. She refused to be intimidated and demanded respect for herself and her family. The intermediary, seeing her determination and the support surrounding her, had no choice but to leave. This moment marked a turning point for Amina. She realized that strength was not just physical or financial, it was moral and emotional. She had stood up against a threat that had once seemed insurmountable, and she had done so without compromising her values. The experience taught her that true survival did not require surrendering dignity, and that courage often meant facing fear with wisdom and support rather than giving in to desperation. By the end of this period, Amina had transformed. She was no longer the frightened girl who had once considered impossible choices. She had become a young woman capable of standing up for herself and her family, navigating danger with intelligence and courage. Rihin remained by her side, a quiet protector and guide, ensuring that she could act safely while maintaining her integrity. The bond between them deepened, rooted in mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Through these experiences, Amina learned invaluable lessons about life, resilience, and human kindness. She realized that even in the darkest moments, there were people willing to help, guide, and protect without asking for anything in return. She discovered her own strength and the power of community. Most importantly, she understood that honor and dignity were worth protecting, no matter how difficult the circumstances. After the tense weeks of fear and uncertainty, Amina began to feel a shift within herself. The constant pressure from the man who sought to exploit her had been overwhelming, but she had survived. She had faced threats, intimidation, and moments when despair seemed unbearable, yet she had stood firm. This period of struggle had changed her, not just in how she approached life, but in how she viewed her own strength and the value of honor and dignity. She realized that she had survived not because of luck or chance, but because she had the courage to face danger while staying true to herself. Amina began to understand that her struggles had given her clarity. She had once thought that survival required compromising her values, that perhaps she might have no choice but to surrender her dignity to protect her family. But the support she received from Rihin, and the kindness of certain villagers who quietly helped her, showed her that there were alternatives. Strength and resilience were more powerful than fear or threats. Courage did not mean risking everything. It meant taking control in difficult situations and finding a path that preserved self-respect. Rihin's role during this time was crucial. He had never forced his presence upon her, nor had he ever pressured her into decisions she was uncomfortable with. Instead, he acted as a steady anchor, offering guidance, protection, and practical solutions. He helped Amina see that she could navigate danger without surrendering her values. Together, they made plans for how she could continue earning honest money, keep her siblings safe, and prevent the man from causing further harm. Rihin's patience and integrity became a source of inspiration for Amina, teaching her the power of steadfast moral support in a world that often demanded compromise. One day, after a long morning working in the fields, Amina and Rihin sat under a large banyan tree at the edge of the village. She spoke candidly about her fears and doubts, about the moments when she had felt cornered and powerless. Rihin listened without interruption, nodding thoughtfully. He reassured her that fear was natural and that what mattered most was how she responded to it. "You have more strength than you realize," he said gently. "You are not defined by the threats around you, but by how you choose to act in spite of them." Amina felt a surge of confidence and hope. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that she could take control of her life. The man's attempts to intimidate Amina had dwindled, partly due to the firm stance Rihin had taken, and partly because she had learned to assert herself. No longer paralyzed by fear, she was able to face the threats with clarity and composure. She knew that she would need to be cautious, but she also understood that fear alone was not a weapon her adversary could use against her anymore. This realization brought a sense of relief and empowerment that Amina had never experienced before. During this time, Amina also focused on her family with renewed determination. She continued to care for her sick father, preparing nutritious meals with the limited resources available, and ensuring that her siblings were well fed and supported. She taught her younger siblings lessons she remembered from school and encouraged them to dream beyond the limitations of the village. Her efforts were tireless, but her newfound confidence made even the most difficult days manageable. She realized that protecting her family's future required not just physical labor, but emotional resilience and strategic thinking. Amina also invested time in improving her own skills. She learned to make more intricate crafts to sell in the market, finding creative ways to attract buyers. She discovered that small efforts, when consistent, could accumulate into meaningful results. Even a few extra coins earned from her work brought a sense of accomplishment and independence. She began to understand that survival did not need to come at the cost of honor or dignity. Through patience, intelligence, and persistence, she could carve a path for herself and her family that was both safe and respectable. One evening, Amina reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She remembered the moments when she had felt trapped, when desperation had clouded her judgment, and when fear had threatened to control her life. She thought about the turning point, how Rehan's steady presence had allowed her to confront danger without surrendering her values, and how the support of even a few kind villagers had made a difference. She realized that honor, courage, and self-respect were far more powerful than money or immediate relief. They were what allowed her to make choices with clarity and dignity. This period of reflection also brought Amina a deeper understanding of human kindness. She realized that not everyone in the world sought to exploit others, and that true support came without conditions or hidden motives. Rehan had never demanded anything from her. He had simply stood by her side, offering guidance, protection, and reassurance. This understanding strengthened her trust in him and allowed her to see that genuine relationships were built on respect and integrity. Amina felt grateful not only for the practical help she had received, but for the moral support that had allowed her to see herself as capable, strong, and worthy. Amina's confidence grew as she took small, deliberate steps to secure her family's future. She arranged for her siblings to attend school regularly, ensuring that they learned skills that would help them in the years to come. She continued her work in the fields and the market, always mindful of her safety and dignity. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her belief that she could survive and thrive without compromising her values. She learned that perseverance, careful planning, and integrity were her most valuable tools in overcoming adversity. Through all of this, Amina discovered that the true meaning of protection was not just about shielding someone from immediate danger, but about empowering them to face challenges with confidence and self-respect. Rehan had protected her not by controlling her actions or offering easy solutions, but by providing guidance and support that preserved her independence and honor. Amina realized that true help uplifts rather than diminishes, and that real strength is measured not by dominance or control, but by the respect and trust one inspires in others. By the end of this period, Amina had transformed from a frightened, desperate young girl into a confident, resilient young woman. She had faced threats that would have broken many, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. She had learned that even in the darkest moments, it was possible to maintain dignity and integrity. Her struggles had taught her patience, courage, and the value of genuine support. She understood that life would always have challenges, but with wisdom, resilience, and the right allies, those challenges could be faced without compromising who she was. Amina's journey during these weeks became a defining moment in her life. She had discovered her inner strength, learned to navigate danger with intelligence and courage, and experienced the power of genuine human kindness. She had survived without surrendering her values, and in doing so, she had preserved the honor and dignity that were most important to her. The lessons she learned during this time would guide her in the years to come, helping her to face future challenges with confidence and grace. And in the quiet moments, when she watched the sunset over the village or listened to the laughter of her siblings, Amina felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She realized that survival was not just about meeting immediate needs. It was about maintaining self-respect, protecting those you love, and having the courage to stand firm in the face of adversity. Her journey had been difficult, but it had shaped her into someone capable of facing life with wisdom, strength, and honor. With the turning point behind her, Amina began to rebuild her life with renewed determination and hope. The weeks and months that followed were not without challenges, but she faced them with a strength she had never known before. Her father's health gradually improved with careful attention and proper care, and her younger siblings thrived under her guidance and protection. Each small step forward was a victory, a reminder that perseverance, courage, and integrity could overcome even the darkest circumstances. Amina continued her honest work in the village, making crafts to sell in the market, helping farmers with their fields, and performing other tasks that earned her small but steady income. She discovered that consistent effort, combined with skill and patience, could produce meaningful results. Every coin she earned was not just money for food or necessities. It was proof of her independence and the value of hard work. She felt proud knowing that she could provide for her family without compromising her dignity, and this pride strengthened her confidence even further. Rehin remained a steady presence in her life, though he never interfered with her independence. He continued to guide her, offering advice and support when needed, but always respecting her choices. He helped her identify opportunities for growth and improvement, encouraged her to pursue small projects that could increase her income, and assisted in ensuring the safety of her family. Their bond had grown stronger through the trials they had faced together, rooted in trust, respect, and mutual admiration. Amina realized that genuine support did not demand surrender. It offered strength, guidance, and encouragement, allowing her to grow while maintaining her dignity. Over time, Amina's reputation in the village changed. People began to notice her resilience, her hard work, and the way she had handled the threats that once loomed over her. They admired her strength and integrity, and some began to offer help voluntarily. Villagers recommended her for additional work. Some even paid for her crafts at fair prices, and others provided small but meaningful support for her family. Amina felt a sense of belonging and recognition she had never experienced before. She understood that respect was earned not only through survival, but through the way she carried herself in the face of adversity. Amina also focused on her siblings' education. She made sure they attended school regularly, encouraged them to study hard, and helped them with lessons whenever she could. She wanted them to have opportunities she had never enjoyed, to dream beyond the limitations of the village, and to grow up knowing that perseverance and integrity were more important than shortcuts or compromise. Her determination to provide for them, to teach them the value of hard work and self-respect, became one of her guiding motivations. As the months passed, the memory of the man who had tried to exploit her began to fade. His influence over the village diminished, and he eventually stopped attempting to contact her. Amina had learned to navigate the threat with wisdom, courage, and careful planning, and in doing so, she had preserved her honor. This experience became a defining chapter in her life, a story of survival without surrender, of courage without compromise. She often reflected on the lessons she had learned, the importance of inner strength, the value of allies who respect you, and the power of facing fear with integrity. Amina also realized the true meaning of protection and support. Rehin had never saved her by taking control of her life or making decisions for her. Instead, he had empowered her to face her challenges with confidence, offering guidance, protection, and reassurance while respecting her independence. This understanding shaped Amina's perspective on relationships, trust, and human kindness. She learned that genuine care uplifts rather than diminishes, and that the strongest bonds are those built on respect, understanding, and shared values. In the following months, Amina found herself exploring new opportunities. She expanded her crafts, learning new techniques and creating unique products that attracted buyers from outside the village. She helped other young women in the community learn these skills, teaching them how to earn an honest living while maintaining their dignity. Her small acts of empowerment inspired others, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that her experiences could help others avoid the hardships she had endured. Amina's father, though still recovering, began to regain some of his strength. He marveled at his daughter's determination, pride shining in his eyes. Her younger siblings grew more confident and independent, encouraged by her example. Amina understood that the sacrifices she had made were not in vain. They had shaped a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate family. She felt gratitude for the support she had received and for the inner strength that had allowed her to endure and overcome. Through it all, Amina maintained a deep sense of self-respect. She knew that survival did not have to come at the cost of dignity, and that every challenge faced with courage and integrity strengthened her character. She realized that life would always present difficulties, but the way she responded to them, through careful choices, hard work, and moral courage, was what defined her. She had learned that resilience was not just about physical endurance, but about emotional and ethical strength. One quiet evening, Amina sat outside her home, watching her younger siblings play as the sun dipped below the horizon. The village was calm, the fields golden in the fading light. She thought about the journey she had traveled, the moments of fear, the moral dilemmas, the threats that had loomed over her life. And she thought about the people who had supported her, especially Rehan, whose guidance and respect had made all the difference. Amina felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that the path ahead would not always be easy, but she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and support to face whatever came her way. Amina's story became an example in her village of how resilience, courage, and integrity could overcome even the most difficult challenges. People spoke of her determination, the way she had protected her family without compromising her values, and the quiet strength that had allowed her to survive and thrive. Her experiences inspired others, especially young women, to believe in themselves and to pursue honest, respectful paths even in the face of adversity. Amina had turned her struggle into a lesson for the community, showing that survival did not require surrender and that honor and dignity could be preserved even under pressure. Ultimately, Amina's journey taught her that life's challenges are not just obstacles. They are opportunities to grow, to discover one's inner strength, and to build character. She realized that true survival is not only about meeting immediate needs, but also about maintaining one's values, protecting those you love, and facing adversity with courage and wisdom. Her experiences had shaped her into a strong, compassionate, and resilient young woman, capable of guiding her family and inspiring others. By the end of this period, Amina had created a life that balanced survival, dignity, and growth. She had found ways to earn an honest living, protect her family, and maintain her self-respect. She had strengthened her bonds with those who genuinely cared for her and learned to recognize the power of human kindness and integrity. Her journey was far from easy, but it had transformed her, giving her the confidence and wisdom to face the future with hope and determination. In the quiet moments when she watched her siblings grow, helped her neighbors, or crafted her products for the market, Amina felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew that she had endured more than most, yet she had preserved her dignity and protected her family. Her story was a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and integrity. A story of a young woman who faced impossible odds, refused to compromise her values, and emerged stronger and wiser. Amina understood that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew that she was no longer the frightened girl she once was. She had learned that true strength comes from within, from the ability to face fear without surrendering your values. She had learned that survival does not mean giving up your honor, and that genuine support can empower rather than control. Most importantly, she had learned that courage, patience, and integrity could guide her through any storm. And so Amina's life moved forward, not as a life defined by hardship alone, but as a life shaped by resilience, moral courage, and the quiet power of self-respect. Her journey had taught her invaluable lessons, not just about survival, but about the essence of human dignity, compassion, and the strength that comes from standing firm in one's values. She had faced despair and danger, and had come through stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before.